to welcome each and every one of you into the Puritan Barn, into the Now You See TV studios for the Midnight Ride with myself and John Pounders. And tonight, a very special guest that John is going to introduce to you. Tonight, the alien psyop. Where did the stories originate about the alien bodies at Roswell, about the United States government back engineering alien craft? We're going to find out tonight. We're going to find out tonight. We're going to peel back the apple in an amazing midnight ride. And you don't have to wait long because it's time to ride. And it all starts right now because we are now live.
Tonight is going to be a special broadcast because I'm actually bringing on somebody who some of you guys probably know who he is, but he does a show with David on FOJC radio every Sunday, and he does a lot of other stuff for FOJC, but he's going to be taking my place on the Midnight Ride for the next few weeks, and y'all willing, I will be back eventually, guys, but tonight, I'd like to welcome you, Visual Disturbance, or Brian as we know him. What's up, Brian?
Hey, John. Thanks for having me on here. Man, it's been like, 3 years, I think, since I've been on the Midnight Ride, my second appearance on here, and I'm super blessed and honored for you and David to have me on here tonight, Brother John. So thank you so much, my friend.
Well, we're excited to have you, man, and I appreciate you, being able to take over for me, and because I'm getting ready next week. I will be leaving to go to Lebanon, and I will be in Lebanon and going there for a variety of reasons. Those of you who've been following the Midnight Ride know those things. So just be in prayer for me, be in prayer for my family. And like I said, y'all willing, I will return to the Midnight Ride so I can ride with you guys once again. But guys, we'll be right back. Stay tuned because we have to have a word from our sponsors. Many mainstream companies put dangerous chemicals in their products that contribute to disease and disability. This is why it's so important that we take care in the products that we consume. The skin is the largest organ in your body, and it is the covering to your temple. Our sponsor tonight is Sugar and Spice Soap Company. They create all natural and biblically clean soaps and beauty products. They even have a soap for Midnight Ride listeners. Use coupon code NYSTV to receive 10% off all your purchases. Link in the description. Very good. David, if you don't mind, put your mic a little bit closer there. It sounds good, but just so there we go. I think we got it. All right. So, well, guys, since we have talked about all we need to talk about, and we have got our coffees, we've got the gas in the motorcycles, we've got the horses saddled up, I think, and I'm going to let you guys ride, and I'm going to be here in the background to comment on anything you guys want me to comment on, but I'm excited for this tonight's show, so guys, stay tuned. David, get us kicked off, buddy.
All right, I'm going to set the table here, and I'm going to be tossing the ball to Brian here, and John's got a lot of things he's going to weigh in on. But we're going to begin by looking at this book, Roswell and the Reich by Joseph Farrell, and also another book, LBJ and the Conspiracy to Kill Kennedy by Mr. Farrell. And we're going to be using this to establish the connection between NASA and the Kennedy assassination. And not only that, but the alien agenda with the Kennedy assassination. It's really amazing, but it's very real and it's very solid. And I like to trace things to their source. And the very source of these stories of alien bodies coming out of Roswell and of scientists in America and Russia backmasking technology from alien craft comes from this book right here. It's called The Day After Roswell by Colonel Philip Corso. And this book right here is the book that started the alien bodies at Roswell and the backmasking alien technology. Now, we're going to look at this book, and we're going to ask the question, is there any reason why we should suspect that this is a total CIA psyop, that this book was written at the behest of the conspirators that are not only covering up the true agenda of what's going on with the aliens, but all the way back to the Kennedy assassination. Now, we're going to begin by looking at this man, Mr. Philip Corso. And I'll read here from the introduction here to this book. And he says, in memory of Lieutenant General Arthur G. Trudeau, he was deeply religious and went on treats at Loyola. Ding, ding, ding. Mr. Trudeau was a Jesuit, and that is the fellow that Mr. Corso said he received his orders and information from concerning these alien bodies and the backmasking of technology. Now, on page 4 here in this book, and he says here on page 3, now, in Roswell in 1947, the landing of a flying saucer was no fantasy. And he comes right out saying it was a flying saucer. And he goes on here on page 4, he says, today, items such as lasers, integrated circuitry, fiber optics, networks, accelerated particle beam devices, and even the Kevlar material in bulletproof vests are all commonplace. Yet the seeds for the development of all of them were found in the crash of the alien craft at Roswell and turned up in my files 14 years later. Now, what is really amazing, in the books by Mr. Farrell, he draws every one of these pieces of technology. He directly relates to the German scientists in World War II. He names them by name and shows the programs that Germany were working on developing this technology even before the war was over. Now, let's just ask ourselves the question, who was Mr. Corso? And Mr. Corso's bio, he was the chief of the U.S. Army's Foreign Technology Division. He was a member of President Eisenhower's National Security Council. He went on to work for Senator Strom Thurmond, 33rd degree Mason, member of the Ku Klux Klan, Strom Thurmond, after retiring from the Army in 1963. Now, this is a quote from Mr. Corso's own words in an interview. He says, yes, it's true. I had German scientists on my team. I discussed this with them. I discussed with them with Oberty and Werner von Braun. I was a part of Project Paperclip with General Trudeau. And he very much admits, Mr. Corso, that him and his Jesuit friend, Mr. Trudeau, who was his boss, they were part of Paperclip, and that he worked personally with the very elite of the Nazi scientists with Operation Paperclip. And this is the guy that wrote The Day After Roswell. And as we say, there's always more. And we brought this out in a broadcast we did on Now You See TV about the Kennedy assassination. And it's a striking fact. You just have to ask yourself why. Lee Harvey Oswald worked at the Riley Coffee Company. And as documented by Mr. Farrell, he says, oddly enough, 5 Riley Coffee employees, all of whom were in contact with Oswald, did join the NASA facility shortly after Oswald's departure. Now, how are we having a flood of people from a coffee company go to work at NASA? Well, that raises some questions, doesn't it? Now, the trail gets even more murky. Not only was Mr. Corso connected by his own admission with Operation Paperclip, he was associated with the highest Nazis that were in the Paperclip with Dornberger, von Braun. But here on page 52, this is on his book, LBJ and the Conspiracy to Kill Kennedy, it says here, from a book by Peter Dale Scott. It says Capel was not acting alone. Phase 1, stories linking Oswald and Ruby to communist, were circulated by Willoughby's associate, Philip P. Corso. He was involved in circulating disinformation, setting up Lee Harvey Oswald as a patsy. He said Corso, a veteran of Army intelligence who had retired by 1963 to work for Senator Strom Thurmond. In 1963 and 1964, Corso and Willoughby were part of a secret right-wing group, the Shikskini Knights of Malta, another secret society of Jesuit bent, and the associations of secret societies are all over Mr. Corso, the Jesuits, the Freemasons, Operation Paperclip, and it gets worse. It gets even worse. The deep, deep connection between the Operation Paperclip and Mr. Corso, I'll read here on page 165 from Mr. Farrell's book, LBJ and the Conspiracy to Kill Kennedy. And Clay Shaw was associated with an organization called Permadex, and in our other JFK assassination broadcast, we linked him with Roy Kahn, who was linked at the hip with Mr. Trump, and there in the 80s. But it says here, Von Braun first met Clay Shaw in 1945 when he, Walter Dornberger, and about 150 other Nazi rocket scientists abandoned Permanunde and traveled south to join the American forces in Germany close to the French border. The Nazis were brought to the Deputy Chief of Staff's headquarters, where Major Clay Shaw was aide-de-camp to General Charles Thrasher. So Clay Shaw, the only guy ever to be prosecuted in relation to the Kennedy assassination, he was there to receive Dornberger and Von Braun when they come into Paperclip, coming right from the Permanunde rocket facility with 100 and the other most elite Nazis coming into Paperclip. Clay Shaw was there, and from the very beginning, Philip Corso was there. In Operation Paperclip, he was there spreading disinformation about Lee Harvey Oswald to set him up at a patsy. This thing has psyop all over it. We that believe the Word of God, we know the truth about what's going on. We know that it's not E.T. from a million miles away, but what I would propose to you is that there is what Mr. Farrell calls the Nazi International. And he believes that this is made up not only after World War II, where there are hundreds of elite scientists went into the United States, but also into Russia. Now, here's another fact that's absolutely stunning. And it's on page 234, and I want to hear what John and Brian have to think about this. But it's a fact, and this comes from Sergei Khrushchev, Nikita Khrushchev's son. And it says here, Sergei Khrushchev, in an interview given in 1997 after his presentation as a NASA conference in Washington, D.C., commemorating the 40th anniversary of Sputnik, Khrushchev said he recalled walking with his father as they discussed the matter, and went on to place the timing of his father's decision about a week before Kennedy's assassination. Now, that decision he's talking about, Khrushchev and Kennedy were actually going to join the United States and Russian space programs together. Kennedy and Khrushchev talked about this 1 week before Kennedy was killed. And the answer is why. Now, the idea that Corso floats in this book was that there's an alien threat, and Kennedy and Khrushchev realized we have to unite to fight the aliens. Or did Kennedy and Khrushchev realize that there were Russian and United States scientists that had come out of Paperclip that were working together with what I think is obvious Nazi bases that were set up in Antarctica with super sophisticated Nazi weapons that were so far beyond what anyone else had that literally a small number of people with this sophisticated weaponry could threaten both the Soviet Union and the United States? I would opt for door number 3. What do you think, my friends?
Yeah, David, I would say that it sounds a little bit premeditated if it was a week prior before the Kennedy assassination. It's a little premeditated. And another thing, too, to point out, Oswald and all those guys that had the supposedly top tier clearance, it's kind of ironic that they go from a coffee shop to top tier, like, complexity of this whole authorization to be top tier NASA employees. So it blows my mind that this all is correlated to alien, and it kind of parallels what's going on here today in 2024. What do you say about that? Because we got the Trump, we have all this politician narrative, the politics, and then we have all this going on back in the 60s here with the JFK. What do you say, David? Because it looks like it looks very similar in the similarities how it's playing out with the alien narrative.
I say what it looks like to me, and we knew this, that even before the war, the Nazi scientists, myself, and John and I, and you and I also, we've talked many times how the German scientists directly attributed their scientific plans to the Vedic text, Mr. Oppenheimer, I become the destroyer of worlds, and that they were deliberately contacting this with the Thule Society and Maria Ospinskaya, I believe was her name, and the Thule Society, that they openly were claiming they were getting their specific designs from other entities. Now, this combined with the tremendous compulsion that Hitler had to enter back into Hyperborea and actually breed the German people with this race in the inner earth. A lot of people say that's crazy. I think he was absolutely dead serious, and he was all about doing it. So what I believe now that's the last thing. And of course, this fits directly in with the scenario in Genesis chapter 6. And that's the last thing that the people there want us to believe, to get out our Bibles and to analyze this thing biblically. So what do? We put a psyop out there. It's all the aliens, because as long as we're looking at aliens coming millions and millions of miles away, we're not going to look what's right under our nose. That this is nothing but a continuation of the experimentation that was done. And I believe we all know the horrible experiments that were done by the German scientists on human beings during the death camps and the Holocaust, just truly hard to even think about. I believe that these experiments are continuing. I believe that they are genetically tampering the human genome. I believe that the creatures that we're seeing are the actual work of these people, what we're seeing. And I think these people are working so hard to perfect their art that we're going to see just how far some people believe they've taken this.
And I think, too, something that this points out pretty profoundly is the migration of the Grail bloodlines and the power, the position of power, because the connecting the KKK, obviously, and America, and where the foundations are huge, because I remember we did a show about the Blue Bloods, and we showed underneath a statue of General Robert E. Lee the notes and the membership of the Knights Templar included underneath that. And so you see this Knights Templar, which is this international banking group. The symbolism is the cross, the Knights Templar cross. You see that the Rothschilds hold that in their family pictures. This is huge in there. And also the Germans hold that huge as well. So you see this kind of migration, because you've got the migration from Mesopotamia to the Mediterranean, and you've got like the German connection to all of this, and you've got the American connection. And it's just profound to me to see all of these things pointed to this group that today we can kind of pinpoint specifically as this group you're talking about. In my opinion, just the symbols are all there.
That's exactly right. And we can see all of these groups. We've got KKK, we got Freemasonry, we've got the Jesuits. All of these are coming off like spokes off of this group. And all of these groups are intertwining with what I believe, we all talk about they, what are they doing? Well, I think this is who they is. I think this is the scientific elite who are united, and also there's the money aspect of it, the international bankers. And I believe that these are the people that are they're trying to engineer and plan the absolute destruction of the human race, to absolutely so pollute the human genome that we're no longer human.
And the way that they've connected, like you said, with the Aryans is what they call these Aryan beings that are blonde-headed, tall, which we see throughout history as the feathered serpents, the travelers of Atlantis. what be it, but they spared no expense in trying to find these entities, and that to me, just there's no way to not see that connection and to not see that something interesting happened post World War II. A lot of people want to be blind to the idea that thousands of scientists came here. They want to be blind to the idea of all of them being in South America. They want to be blind to the idea that all of the money disappeared from the German reserve and all the Nazis came over here. I mean, there's so many coincidences there. I just don't know how to overlook them.
And that's the job of the media. They'll let people look at what they want them to look at. And they'll cover up and they'll interject disinformation. And that's what we got here. This is 100% CIA psyop and misinformation, the whole scenario. And they've done everything they could to, and then we got the whole predictive programming of Hollywood coming in to get everybody looking. That's what magic is. To keep people from seeing what they're doing, you redirect their attention to something over here. And that's what we got.
And I have to agree too, gentlemen. When you mentioned the blonde hair, blue eyes, the Aryans, didn't Hitler, he was very big in specializing into twins, right? And if you go into the Argentina account, you can go into villages back then, there was 60 or 70% of some of these little schoolhouses had twins, like 60 or 70% of the classes would have twins, blonde hair, blue eyes. And, it kind of goes along with what I was saying earlier with Oswald. And isn't that interesting that they said there was many of them, of the Oswald accounts with the JFK associated with all that. It's kind of interesting. They kept saying there was multiple doppelgangers of that gentleman. And, and then we get into the Nazi narrative with the Project Paperclip. You have the VNAMA, the Nazi Bell. They done something nefarious with some type of vibrational rate, however you want to go there down that rabbit hole when it comes into propulsion systems or whatnot. But Hitler must have had top tier clearance or something, some way, like Brother David just said with the Antarctica bases, he had to have some type of preconceived knowledge to be able to pull off what he did.
Well, it's established a fact. In the 30s, the Nazis were building bases in Antarctica in the 30s. They had submarine bases there. It was a known fact. The documentation of the tons and tons of material that were taken there by U-boats, these are just facts that no one wants to look at. We could talk about the missing U-boats. Many missing submarines were never found. Where'd they go? Well, I think I might know. And let's think about this just for a minute. Let's just get conspiratorial. This is the Midnight Ride, after all. But think about the doubles, the doppelgangers. Did we see any of them at NASA? Did NASA come up with any of those that, there have been strange reports about people that supposedly died? Well, they've been seen, after they died. What's that all about? Do we got this doppelganger scenario going on here? Are these actually them, something created to clone? What's going on? I don't know, but something stinks here. Something stinks with this whole thing.
They've been found in colleges teaching and physicists, all these different things, all these different applications and occupations. They continue on the same name. And then, interesting thing too, David and John, the NASA has a twin program. They look at they associate with, different, as far as it's almost, there's a certain term I can't use. They want to look at the pathways and neural pathways and see how they associate with different colors and see if they have telekinesis, telepathic capabilities and see what their likes are and if they can work off each other, so to speak, and network off each other because they have this twin DNA connection. And I think it's very interesting. They do have it. You can look this up on the NASA program. They do have on the NASA website that they do associate. They're really big into researching twins. And I think that's just bizarre world as we live in, David and John. But it goes back to what and they've been doing some nefarious stuff and baffling things for 70 plus years. And I think the American people and everybody in the world are just now catching up. We're a little slow on the go here, but it's leaking out, so to speak. Mm-hmm.
And it's well documented that Hitler was zealous. He would have the SS search all over for twins, and he would bring them in, and if he could find Jewish twins, he was just so happy. And the things that they did to him were absolutely unspeakable. It's hard to even talk or think about. And I believe this is the type of experimentation that's continuing. Now, I want to throw something out to you guys here. This is from a book called Walking Among Us, The Alien Plan to Control Humanity by David Jacobs. And Mr. Jacobs is, and on the back of it, it says, "The threat is real." Now, Mr. Jacobs is in the UFO community. He buys in totally to the aliens coming from millions of miles away and this whole thing. But his research of what is going on is so spot on. The only thing wrong, instead of the aliens, it's these people that I believe it's these, the scientists that were a continuation of the German and American paperclip scientists working together with these Nazis and their technology that escaped, working directly with fallen angels. I believe they have come to the place where they have contacted the fallen ones and they're working directly in league with the fallen angels. Now, this is what Mr. Jacobs maintains in his book. And on page 31, he talks about the hybrids. He talks about hybrids, and he talks about, the different kinds, the grays that so many people have talked about. They were some of the early products of this experimentation. But on page 31, he talks about the hybrids. And he said, hybrids represent the end point of the human hybridization program. They are indistinguishable from humans in every way except neurologically. They can speak orally or use telepathy, and most important, they can neurologically control humans. It seems they have one main function: to live on Earth undetected, blending seamlessly into society. This goal is the pendulumative event in the abduction program. And I believe that this is absolutely happening. I would agree with Mr. Jacobs 100%. Instead, it's not coming from ET hundreds of light years away. It's coming from right here. Human beings that are working together with the fallen ones to put forth the final agenda of Satan that will culminate in